Let's get this started. So I'll call the town board meeting of Wednesday, November 12th, 2025 to order at 6:30, and if everybody could please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Alicia, if you could do roll call, please.
Supervisor Henriksen,
Here.
Supervisor Cole,
Here.
Supervisor Olson,
Here.
Supervisor Milliburn.
Here.
Supervisor Ludke.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and we'll open it up for any public comment. This is the public forum section. And just a reminder that this is for topics that are not on the agenda. Ed?
Okay, Ed Kramer, 7860 Fawn Lake Drive. My question is, why is the reuse center not open? It's been years in the making. And I keep saying that they don't have an occupancy permit yet. Why? This is one place that we can get some revenue incoming without the taxpayers' money.
It's a good question. But the forum is for comments and not necessarily an interaction. So I'll just keep that in mind with the forum. But we'll try to get some information put together as far as when that starts.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
That's it for me too.
What was your question, Judy? All right. All right. Anybody else for public forum? All right. We have three people that have questions about when the reuse is going to open. So we'll get working on an answer for you. All right. Thank you. Probably not today. All right. So we'll close public forum and we will move on to number 5. So this is the approval of the agenda. Is there any suggested changes or modifications? Yes, Supervisor Cole.
I have a few modifications. One is in front of everybody. It is to add, I guess this would be under new business. So this would be under 7.12. Apologies. This should be short, but there's 2 decisions that need to be made regarding Abdo about who's going to be attending weekly check-ins and how we want them to engage employees.
Okay.
So I guess the name of that would just be Abdo actions. The second update I would make to the agenda would be to remove 8.1 from old business code of conduct update. That is not ready. That is being covered partially by 7.4 under new business. So I don't know if 8.2 becomes 8.1. But I don't think that I'm not prepared to talk about code of conduct tonight.
Okay, so remove 8.1. Okay.
Yep.
We'll leave 8.2 in there. We'll just skip over 8.1. All right, any other suggested changes? Yes, Supervisor Ledke.
Motion to I would like to remove 7.11. The installation bid, the building team's gonna come back with more information on that, so table that for a future meeting. So that was 7.11.
Great. Any others? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as modified. More?
Remove 7.1.
Oh yeah, all 7.1. All right,
Is this the time to pull something from the consent?
no, we'll do the consent agenda next.
Okay.
Any other modifications? Hearing none, all in favor of approved motion?
I don't think there
Oh,
was.
wait. No,
I'll motion to approve the agenda as amended by supervisor recommendations.
Second.
all right, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. All right, we'll move on to approval of the consent agenda now. Supervisor Cole.
I motion that we pull 6.8 and 6.9 from the consent agenda.
All right, and put that on the regular agenda?
Yep.
All right, 6.8 and 6.9. We'll move that down into 7.13 then. So 7.13 now will 7.13 and 14 will be those two agenda items. All right, any other modifications, Supervisor Ledke?
Motion to pull 6.10 to make that 715.
Pull 6.10 and put it on the regular agenda as 7.5.
715.
7 got it, 7.15. Any other changes? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any other discussions? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will move on with new business. We're gonna go right to 7.2. This is a school forest committee appointment, and Supervisor Cole.
So I had Beth Riopol draft this request for action. Also attached is her letter of interest for an appointment to the school forest committee. She has been attending the school forest committee meetings for a few meetings now, and they are in desperate need of a treasurer. Nobody on the committee currently seems to be as interested or as capable as Beth. Beth works in finance. And Beth seems very willing to take on that role, but they're waiting for us to approve her appointment first. So the recommended motion here is to approve Beth Ripple as one of 4 township members of the school forest committee.
All right, is that your motion?
That is my motion.
Okay, motion been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Did your other treasurer retire?
She has stepped down at the last meeting. I had to leave before that had officially happened, but she's in the process of stepping down.
That's a huge board thing, because she's been doing it, I believe, since it started.
So do we need to approve her stepping down?
I would like, I think this board should
Okay,
thank her.
yeah, I
for what
agree.
She's done, but yeah, I just like the board to make sure we know that when she does step down.
Okay, I'll reach out.
Thank you.
Supervisor Licky?
That was gonna be my question. Do we know who our township appointees are?
We do not. That's another problem. As of right now, I think the simplest way to move forward, and I'll bring this back to the school forest committee, is to reappoint everybody. School forest committee is not operating very formally. I don't think that they know either. So I will come back with that information, but I think we should still move forward with this appointment.
Supervisor Miller?
I know it's somewhere in that office. I know it says school and it says township. So I know it's somewhere in that office. I can find out for you tomorrow if you want, tell you where it is, because I know it's in there, but I just don't know where.
So this is, this would be no different than, to me, than the Sunrise Watershed. And so it kind of acts as its own entity. It does act as its own entity. And we approve who sits on that board and who doesn't.
Correct.
If a person wants to sit on that board, we couldn't fill that seat until we've accepted the removal of another person. So I'm wondering, because I think Beth would be awesome at that.
Mhm.
So I have no problem with that, but I don't know how we appoint a person to a seat that may not be vacant yet.
Mr. Chair, if I could chime in briefly, I think that you could use the language to appoint contingent to the resignation. So you're approving the appointment contingent on the resignation of whomever is currently serving in that capacity. That way you don't need to come back at a meeting again or redo the motion, it would become effective immediately upon the resignation. You probably would need to accept the resignation at the next meeting. I would just do that to close the formality of it, but then it would be right in place. So either way you do it, you could do it contingent on the resignation or handle it all at the next meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'll amend my motion to approve Beth Ripple contingent on the resignation of the current treasurer. I will follow up with the school forest committee to get the details on that and get the details on who they think are our current appointees. And I'll work with Alicia and Bob to see if that matches what we have in the office and move forward with that from there.
I don't think that was your entire motion, right? Just.
No, sorry, I
Thank
kind
you.
of
Okay.
rambled.
That's all right. Bob, will you accept that?
Yeah, I accept that. But one more thing about that is if we don't know who's on it, we don't know if we're at the capacity. So if we're not at the capacity, we don't have to wait for somebody to resign to put her on it. So until we know the capacity of the town appointed ones, I know it's in there. It's in all the paperwork. It's a stack about yay big. It says who's on there.
And if for some reason you can't find that paperwork, I would just use the language to reaffirm whoever the members are. You know, you can do that by motion. You could do it by written resolution if you want it to be crystal clear. You know, if you wanted to just do a brief resolution that says these individuals have been operating in this capacity while the township does not have direct record of when this was approved. This resolution hereby reaffirms that these individuals are serving in this capacity.
I agree. So I think to the next meeting, I'll bring a list of 4 names, hopefully, maybe less.
It's in the JPA with the school too.
Yep. And I will, so I'll bring the details on the resignation. If you guys would prefer, we can also postpone this to the next meeting, just do it as one lump sum. If that's simpler.
I think we should probably follow through just in case the old treasurer needs to step down before that. That way, if there's anything that has to be financially wise, they can do that.
That was gonna be my question, is if she can act as treasurer without being appointed as a voting member? Because it's kind of a brewing situation where she wants to step down, but they need Beth to go to the bank. And they were holding off on that until we approve this.
I don't think they could,
Okay.
for sure, Mark.
This is just so I can get an understanding of committee that you all have created to oversee some town function.
Yeah, it's a school forced, so we're in a joint powers agreement with the school district.
Without reading the JPA, I wouldn't feel comfortable advising on whether or not she could do that. If that's something you'd like me to review, I would be happy to. I don't know if that's something that's accessible tonight, because I could give it a quick peruse. If not, I would wait. The other option that I could think about advising you would be to essentially approve in advance a resignation. So if you do receive a written resignation from the person who is currently serving as treasurer, you already have approved that. You don't have to come back. I just don't know how I feel about doing that without reading the JPA. So my preference would be read the JPA and advise you all accordingly.
We still wouldn't have a problem appointing Beth, right? We're just not gonna define what her role is on that committee then, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think we're okay with the motion going forward with that. So Beth is there, like Lisa said, I think that's a good point. And but now it's up to that committee also to know that JPA and whether she's authorized to be able to go to the bank. It's no different than what we do with Sunrise Watershed. Sunrise Watershed, we act as a board and we determine who is our treasurer and who has signature authority on the checks. We don't have to come to each municipality and ask for that each time. So that's why I think that's more of an internal function of that group.
So your preference is that we do the contingent approval of Beth, contingent on the official resignation? But doesn't that run into the same problem where that's gonna need the next meeting anyway for us to accept it?
To accept the full list.
To accept the resignation?
Right, and we would accept the resignation, right? Exactly.
So either way, she's not really getting appointed until the next meeting.
So she'd be appointed as of tonight, contingent upon that resignation.
But the contingency wouldn't be satisfied until the next meeting, right?
Yeah, I think what Supervisor Cole's point is that the written resignation could be submitted, but it would be upon the acceptance of that resignation that the board would then put the new individual in as the treasurer. is there any business that would be conducted in the next 2 weeks that would require the treasurer to go to the bank? Are we overthinking this? Right, because
Supervisor Lutke?
I believe so.
Yeah, we might.
I think that the one person, she was staying on just so that they could take care of all the money for the Halloween party. And then I think after that, there might be more time.
I could check quickly when the next school forest committee meeting is, because I think they still have to take that action to appoint her as the treasurer anyway. So if that meeting isn't until after our next meeting, then we are probably overthinking
That
this.
is correct. They don't meet till the first.
Yeah.
Yep, the 1st of December is the next school forest meeting. So if we appoint her tonight or we appoint her on the 25th, is there any difference? Practically speaking?
Well, I think we already brought it up. I mean, we might as well just appoint her now and then.
Sure, or
December-
that works too.
Then in December, when we have the resignation and all that, we can finalize
Sure,
everything then.
okay. So I'll keep the motion that I had made before.
The motion's been made and seconded. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, we'll move on to 7.3. This is the drug testing policy. Supervisor Cole.
Yes, so this, my intentions here have changed a bit since the discussion with Abdo, but I'll briefly explain. So this is not about any specific incident. I want to be really clear about that. This is very general. I'm referencing the employee handbook section 7, specifically 7.2, which is the drug and alcohol policy, which I'll just read out loud briefly. Limit Township is committed to maintaining a drug-free, healthful, safe work environment. Employees are required to come into work in a mental and physical condition that will allow them to perform their job satisfactorily. Linwood Township employees may not use, possess, distribute, sell, or be under the influence of alcohol or illegal drugs while on township premises or while conducting any township-related activity off premises. Employees may use legally prescribed drugs. I'll get to the point that I'm trying to make here. If an employee violates this policy, it may lead up to this disciplinary action up to and including immediate termination of employment and referral for prosecution. This is the main point here. If there is a reason to suspect that the employee is working while under the influence of an illegal drug or alcohol, then the employer chooses to have the employee tested. The employee will be suspended with or without pay until the results of drug and alcohol tests are made available to the town board by testing laboratory. That sentence there is my issue. It seems to imply that we can drug test the employees, but it's not really saying that directly. It's saying what happens if we choose to do that. There's a second DOT drug alcohol testing policy that I've also included, but this is specific to CDL carriers and DOT certified drivers, which does not include the majority of our employees. So my understanding based on what I've heard generally is that any supervisor can request, sorry, I'll speak in the mic, can request that an employee take a drug test at any time for any reason. And so what I want to clarify here, and this is discussion, I'm not intending to make any decisions tonight, is whether that is the intention of the board for that to be the policy. And if it is, I think that the handbook does not express that clearly enough. I also don't think that that should be the policy, but that's a separate, that is this discussion, but that's my second point.
Mr. Chair, could I chime in on that?
Yes, please.
So with respect to the ability to test whenever the board wants, I would caution against doing that willy-nilly. There's actually Minnesota statute with respect to testing and drug testing. It could be for alcohol, cannabis, which has its own set of restraints now that cannabis is legal. So we can have that conversation as well, or any other narcotic or drug. The limitations on testing are essentially this, that you can't test whenever you want. And when you test, you need to be testing in a consistent way so as to not create a discriminatory practice. For example, you can't just say, today I feel like testing this person. It could be held against you. So you can either test on a consistent interval to where everybody of a same job class goes in and does a test. That's, applied objectively. It's not subjective. I feel like testing you today would be subjective. Some of those limitations as well have carve-outs. One of those carve-outs being subdivision 5 of the statute, which is reasonable suspicion testing. This is the one that you would most likely use. So you can test all applicants as they come in. You can test your employees on that kind of regular basis. There needs to be notice of when you're going to be testing, the testing intervals, which job classes are going to be tested. But this reasonable suspicion testing is the one that I think is getting at Supervisor Cole. When you're talking about, we think we can kind of test when we want. That test when we want isn't when we want. It's when there's reasonable suspicion of 4 different things. 1, somebody is under the influence of drugs, cannabis, or alcohol while on the job. 2, they violated the employer's written work rules prohibiting the use, possession, impairment, sale, transfer of drugs, alcohol, cannabis flower, cannabis products, etc. while on the job. 3, has sustained a personal injury or has caused another employee to sustain a personal injury. That one doesn't require anything to do with you actually suspecting them being reasonable suspicion that they're under the influence. You can just test them if they cause an injury to another person. And then 4th is similar, has caused a work-related accident or was operating or helping to operate machinery, equipment, or vehicles involved in a work-related accident. So there again, it's not saying you need reasonable suspicion that somebody was impaired, which caused an accident. It's you need reasonable suspicion that there was a work-related accident. Then you can test to make that determination. So those last 2 don't necessarily have the requirement that you have reasonable suspicion somebody's impaired. So I've used this phrase reasonable suspicion a couple of times. Generally, what does it mean? It means there's it's more than a mere whim, right? There's some either direct or indirect evidence that an individual is impaired. And so in making that determination, I would encourage you to consult with either myself or Mr. Rupee from my office to make a determination before you send somebody for a drug test, just so we could say whether or not there's reasonable suspicion testing. What implication does this have for the policy moving forward? I think I should work with ABDO in making sure that our policy reflects this statute and the limitations it imposes on testing. Supervisor Cole, you're exactly right to say that there are different standards for CDL, individuals with a CDL or commercial driver's license, because there is a whole series of federal code that determines the drug testing process. It is much more rigid, and there are greater restrictions, i.e. greater limitations on cannabis consumption. Because here pretty much Minnesota law is you can't penalize somebody for consuming cannabis now because it's legal. However, if somebody possesses, transfers, sells, consumes, or is impaired by cannabis while on the job, different story. And so you need to treat those 2 types of employees very different. And if you do have a situation where you're drug testing someone with a CDL, contact our office, because you can't send them just to any testing office. There are very stringent requirements about what a licensed testing officer or testing medical officer is within federal code. So we would need to look through that. But in short, I think we should look at my office with ABDO in making sure that your policy is compliant with the limitations in this statute. I would highly encourage you to include reasonable suspicion testing in your personnel policy. So that way, when you have suspicion, there are accidents or injuries, or you see somebody consuming on the job, you can go send them for a test.
Yes, Supervisor Cole.
So I've got a bunch of questions.
course.
Let's start with the first 2 criteria that were less subjective. They were more reasonable suspicion, a little more of a gray area. And these seem to be more pointed towards, you think that somebody's using on the job. If that is the case, that you're suspicious that they're high at work, then why would you have them drive to a drug test? Is the expectation that a supervisor should drive them?
Yeah, I would not encourage them to drive whatsoever. I actually would encourage this process that if there is significant indicia that there is impairment, I would contact a law enforcement officer and have them come to the scene. A couple of reasons. One, if you are going to discipline an employee, and again, I'm just generally speaking here, if you're going to discipline an employee who you believe is impaired and you get a drug test, that drug test comes back positive. If we have Ms. Larson, for example, a clerk, or any of the supervisors here make that determination and send somebody to get tested, you all are not trained law enforcement officers who are trained to detect signs of impairment. Like, we obviously can all see bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, etc., but none of us here are experts in that. And so if we are to discipline an employee, having a police report from a trained law enforcement officer who is able to make those reads would be helpful in both us saying, yes, there is reasonable suspicion to send him or her for testing, but also to then, when we get to a disciplinary perspective, have that police report to rely on as evidence.
So you're saying that as we draft this policy, it sounds like you're saying if the suspicion is that they are high at the moment, that the best course of action there is to have a law enforcement make the determination of whether they're fit to go drive to the drug test?
So I will never put that in your policy, and here's why. I never want to box the township in anything more than what statute requires. So when we continue to, when we make policies and we put in these provisions that aren't required, like we must call law enforcement to make this determination. The one time that we fail to do it and somebody is obviously high, they've got cocaine in their pocket, you can't fire them then because you didn't call law enforcement, right? So I never want to over legislate the procedures of how we do this. This is kind of a best practices tip. And I would say you have no further obligation than what's going to be in your policy and what's in statute. And so you can use those powers to your ability, but I don't want to over legislate. And this is going to be true for your entire personnel policy. I don't want it to be over legislating of what you need to do beyond the obligations that are in statute or federal law with some of this employment stuff.
Then I guess the question becomes, how do we avoid, I understand what you're saying, that makes sense. How do we avoid somebody who 10 years from now, it's a big assumption on my part that they would read the handbook in the first place and understand that. But how do we make sure that they understand that they should not just be sending somebody who might be impaired driving, which I would imagine would bring liability in its own right, that they told me to drive here, I was high, I don't really know how that works out, but how do we get the best of both worlds where we're not boxing ourselves in, but we're also being clear, like, this is the recommended approach if you're in this situation?
Yeah, so I mean, instead of saying you must call law enforcement, I think you could put a disclaimer in there that the city does not condone anybody who they suspect of being under the influence of driving, and that the individual is responsible for making accommodations at the township's request to get to a testing center in a reasonable amount of time. Also, just to address one small thing that you said, which is you don't expect anybody's going to read the policy. I'm going to advise you completely to the contrary. There will be an acknowledgement form at the back of any policy that you have that will be distributed to each employee, and they will sign it. A couple of reasons why. There are particular notices that were required by statute. There could be some with respect to this drug testing. We're required to notify individuals of the results of a drug test. So in your personnel policy, I'm going to advise you have a few forms. One is a pre-testing acknowledgement form that the individual will sign before they go for the drug test. That will acknowledge any of the drugs that they have a legal prescription for. So that way you can compare that to the drug results that you get after. The second is going to be a post-test results form that informs them of their rights under statute to go and get tested again within a certain period of time. There's a series of statute that I can't rattle off the top of my head, but I can quickly access if there are questions about just with respect to notice requirements. Once an individual has tested positive, you can notify them, and then it triggers a series of within X many days, you may request, a competing test, et cetera, et cetera. And then lastly, I mean, we have different policies, paid family medical leave, earned sick and safe time that the Department of Labor and Industry requires us notify our employees about. So when we talk about having acknowledgement forms in the employee handbook, we're going to put our notices in our handbook and then have an acknowledgement form that every employee and new hire should sign that says, I acknowledge all, contents of this handbook, all notices contained herein. So that way, if you are ever in a position to where somebody tries to sue the township for saying you didn't provide me notice of this, we'll point straight back to the handbook. The acknowledgement form that they sign will be in their personnel file.
I'm worried a little bit more about the supervisors. Would
Okay.
the supervisors be signing these forms, or would they be signing something different?
Which forms?
Like the acknowledgement that they've read the handbook and understand like the handbook, or specifically that they understand what they're supposed to be doing if they suspect somebody being high on the job.
Okay, so the acknowledgement are the pre-testing form for drugs in particular? Or are you talking about the acknowledgement of the entirety of the contents of the handbook?
My original question when I was talking about worried about them not seeing that in the handbook is I was more talking about a supervisor. My question, like to go back a few steps, was how do we make sure that supervisors or staff who might be making this determination and saying this person needs to go get a drug test, how do we make sure that they understand that if the suspicion is that the person is high in the moment, that their best course of action, their recommended course of action is to go use law enforcement instead of asking them to drive directly to the testing center themselves?
How do we go about that?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be just an informational memo from my office, just saying, this is what we advise to be best steps, and that gets distributed to all staff. You know, ultimately, who you're going to vest with the power to make that final determination. I know we're going to talk about possibly creating different structures, maybe having somebody serve in a coordinator position. It could be that individual, with then a fallback of if that person is out, it could fall to the chairperson, or you could even delegate that determination power to the town attorney as well. So that way you call our office and describe the situation that's happened to us. And then we can call the shot with respect to whether or not we believe there's reasonable suspicion. In those instances, it's hard because in general, I'll encourage the board as a whole to be the decision-making entity. But we can't call a snap special meeting to all get together and say, is this individual under the influence or not? Or did I see them with drugs or not, et cetera. And so that is one instance where I'll kind of deviate from my normal advice, which would be board as a whole make a decision. It requires a more of an urgent response. And, you know, perhaps any supervisor can independently make that determination, but it's encouraged that they consult with, you know, town attorney.
So I think the issue with the idea of the memorandum is that will work for everybody who's on the board currently, but I'm thinking more like 5-10 years down the line. Is the role of the handbook? So when somebody starts, they're handed, you know, here's the guide. Is that, and in my mind, that was the handbook. But it sounds like with the handbook with you, you're more concerned about not boxing in. So I guess, and this maybe is a discussion for the whole board and maybe for Abdo, but like, I don't want to have somebody 10 years from now make that mistake. If we could have put this procedure somewhere that they would review when they started. Does that make sense?
And are you talking about a supervisor starting?
A supervisor or a staff who maybe is some sort of supervisor role.
I think that you could have a separate practice material in which we create a clear disclaimer that this is not a personnel policy. It is not binding policy created by the board, but rather is just an advisory guide on how to proceed in certain situations. We could put that document together. Either I could, myself, or Abdo, or us in tandem. But I would encourage, kind of like you just indicated, you're viewing the employee handbook as this practicing guide. The employee handbook, in my position, it should never make reference to the roles of elected officials or intermingle the roles of employees and elected officials. For example, you all cannot be terminated. You are elected officials. Your employees can be. So if we're containing language in a handbook that talks about, you know, employees, part-time, full-time, and elected officials are subject to this policy, you're not. State statute controls there over your policy. And so I understand your need and desire to create something so that what I say tonight or what I put in a memorandum tomorrow is not gone 5 to 10 years from now. It could be memorialized in even an office binder that you all keep as a practice guide for supervisors and individuals in managing positions.
Sure. Okay. This is a more complicated conversation than I thought it was going to be, but I appreciate it.
No, it's super good information. So it's, well, I'm glad. But I think you're gonna participate with the review of the handbook along with Abdo. So I'm assuming that you're gonna catch all the things that you talked about as far as recommendations and stuff out of that.
Yes, and I've already performed a fair amount of red lines to the handbook with particular things that I have issue with. We did have a discussion with Abdo today in which Abdo indicated as a part of their services, they do offer a handbook that is drafted by another attorney. They indicated that they would get that to me before the meeting today. If they did, my apologies for not seeing it, but I did not see it prior to the meeting today. So the intent was for me to review that and then advise you all on if I think it is more economical and a better approach just overall to start from scratch. It's my understanding that your handbook was not drafted by an attorney. It may have been reviewed by an attorney or attorneys in the past. But if I think it's a better launching point, and it's going to be more economical for the township to just take this template that they have and then incorporate my red lines and my advice to you all, I think we should go that way 100%.
Perfect. Sounds great. Sounds real good. All right. Anything else on 7.4 or 7.3? All right. Seeing none. Brian, did you have a question? Name and address.
Ryan Langlois, 232nd Avenue. Just a clarification. We're talking about the code of conduct and employee handbook as a one unit?
No.
Or these two different subjects?
Two different.
So since I'm already up here, when it does come to the code of conduct, given what the attorney has said about elected officials versus hired individuals in the township, that's when we were talking about the code of conduct. It would be a good idea to have that signed off annually. It would seem to me that you need two. One that takes into account employees of the township and board members. And because the steps of accountability to the board members are obviously going to be different. Because like you said, you can't be fired, but there should be some way that if a code of conduct is violated, that it has penalties.
Correct. So the code of conduct at the very beginning of it, and I remember there was some confusion around this, so I wanted to make sure it was clear at the beginning. The code of conduct is addressed to supervisors and how supervisors run the meeting. And the employee handbook is directed at staff and supervisors, but Mark is recommending that we make that just staff. And I think that's kind of true. There's two documents: code of conduct for supervisors, employee handbook for employees.
It should also be a code, in my opinion, should be a code of conduct for employees as well. That's what we have.
I think it would be incorporated therein, right, as to how employees are to behave while on the job, and if they are not abiding by what is referred to, personnel policy, employee handbook, whatever you want to call it, then there's a series of generally escalating steps for discipline that exist. There's a whole statutory process that's carved out for town boards to go through when they engage in a discipline with an employee. And I'm not going to belabor everyone with that process now, but that is the process that they would follow in that instance. With respect to code of conduct, I understand, you want there to be accountability for supervisors as well. Everybody does. The best accountability, and really what the legislature intends, is for that accountability to come at the ballot box. So I get that that's not always the thing that residents want to hear, but there are very limited powers that a chairperson can take with respect to the other supervisors to align misconduct, or if the chairperson is out of line, what other council members can do to the chair. Generally speaking, whomever is serving as the presiding officer, generally the chair, cannot recognize a breaching council member at the hearing, and can just elect to not let them talk if they are breaking the rules. They can formally declare the actions out of order. And then the biggest thing that you can really do is to censure someone, which is a formal vote of the board to essentially slap them on the wrist. You can't kick them out. I would advise against kicking them out. There are certain First Amendment protections that would apply. There are also the statutory provisions that apply that they are an elected official and a voting member of the board. And so that code of conduct serves, it's kind of like the honor system, right? There's very little that you can do to actually get somebody out of power other than the people who live in the township voting that person out.
Very good. All right. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
All right. We're wrapped up with 7.3. Let's move on to 7.4. This is the agenda form review.
Yeah, so
Supervisor
this
Cool.
is a subtopic of the code of conduct in regards to the agenda. So originally I had intended for this to be a full revision of the code of conduct, but it got complicated enough that I wanted to discuss what I have, and then if this looks good, then to incorporate it into the larger document. So we discussed having a form for agenda items. I met with Billy, we worked on this together, and we came up with kind of a double-sided form. So if you go to page, looks like 69 and 70, these are the two forms. And They would be one document just for ease of use, but the intention is that you fill out one or the other for whatever you're trying to put on the agenda. It's either a request for action, which means that you're recommending some kind of motion. It has different fields, or it's information only, which is just a discussion. You're not intending for any sort of vote. We figured this simplifies things because we can get rid of the whole, like, if it's information only, then you only need a description, but if it's an RFA, then you could skip the description. We just like give everything a form. If it's information only, use the information only form. If it's not, use the request for action form. That way it's not, there's not a whole lot to remember. It's just fill out either one side or the other, depending on what you're trying to get onto the agenda. And Billy can obviously help with that as well. If you look at them, let's see here. Let's see, the request for action has more fields to it. So it has a recommended action section where you would put in your potential motion or different options for motions that you're going to be doing. Audience input permitted, we had discussed that we want that to be explicit on these items, and attachments as well. But the information only is much more brief. It's just a description of what you're going to be discussing and then the audience input and attachments fields. So I wanted to get some feedback on these forms, if they're looking good or if they look good with a few amendments. I'm going to incorporate them into a larger agenda preparation document that will live side by side with the code of conduct and move most of the agenda stuff out of the code of conduct.
Great, thank you, Cole. Anybody have any comments, feedback, Supervisor Cole? So, I think they look good. The only thing I would maybe throw out there as a suggestion is a statement of what the motion might be.
That would be recommended action.
Okay.
Or should I rephrase that?
Well, I was thinking of the actual verbiage of what's going to be in the motion. It may not be a requirement, but it helps to kind of understand what the motion is going to, contain.
Okay, so I guess do we want to rename recommended action? Because I always word my motions exactly in that section.
Okay. No, and it's fine. I've been adding something at the bottom and,
Okay.
but it doesn't matter. I guess as a core, this is good.
Okay, I could look at and seeing if I could make that a little more clear.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I'm confused on, you're saying you want another line saying, looking at what he has there, it says a motion to approve volunteers to pull weeds.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not a big deal. I've been adding on to the bottom of mine a proposed motion so that the motion itself is worded out, kind of like what we would do with a resolution per se. Is that it's like I said, it's not a big deal. I'll just add it to the bottom of mine each time, but sometimes the verbiage of the motion is helpful. Just my 2 cents.
Are there ever any proposed actions or recommended actions that would be a motion? Like, do we want to just rename it to just be like proposed motion, or is there something that we want to keep this open, like some other kind of action that wouldn't be a motion?
No, I guess, like I said, it's not a big deal. I put the verbiage of what I'm gonna say in the
Okay.
motion down, and if others don't, it's not the end of the world.
Okay.
Your clerk will love you if you do put the language of the motion. It makes minutes easier for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and just the understanding of the content of the motion is the way I look at it, but
Are you, I guess that's where I'm so lost. Do we want to just move recommended action to the bottom? Is that what you're saying? Or you want it?
well, the way I was doing it was I would do the background, I'd do the recommendation. I would do a financial impact, and then I would do my proposed motion. And the proposed motion would be the wording of what I was gonna state as a motion.
I think what the chair is recommending here is using the recommendation as almost your pitch for why you think the motion should happen, and then having exact motion language under its own separate header.
Correct.
Sure. Yeah, that's easy.
All right.
Cool.
Like I said, that was the only thing I had, but otherwise I think the rest of it really looks good.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Last one for me. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So that's 7.4, so 7.5 website go live.
Correct. This is, so basically Town Web is almost done with, the new website. They have a demo, that is available to preview, although there may be some small changes based on the final, template that we choose based off of the feedback from the surveys. Things are happening pretty rapidly. I don't know exactly what the timeline will be, but I did want to get this motion out, to approve us getting this website live so that we don't end up in a situation where it's ready to go and we have to wait for the next board meeting. So what that would involve would be having Town Web put the website live under the .gov, linwoodtownship.gov address, and then putting a forward, a redirect from linwoodtownship.org to linwoodtownship.gov so that if people are still using the old website, it will bring them directly to the new one. Additionally, the strategy that we're hoping to take with this website is not a one-to-one transfer of all content from the old website to the new website, but rather in favor of speed, we're hoping to just move over the essentials of our current website to the new website, get it running, and then add anything that's missing as it comes up. It's much, much easier to add a page that got left off than it is to not deploy this website until it's perfect. And so I also wanted to have a discussion of what is everybody's bare essentials for the website. Like, you would not want it to go live without this page or that page. And so I was hoping to have that conversation. And then with that conversation, a motion to approve it going live once we have those essentials in place.
Yeah,
If
Supervisor
I
Leahy.
just may add the .gov portion of it, that's been implemented. Staff is working through. That was a whole thing that we have to actually officially register to receive, and that's part of legislation that's coming. Clerk did send that out, that our emails will be changing. That's gonna be like a future phase of this. But the .gov has been awarded and then will be moved over through some other migration stuff. So as Supervisor Cole's saying, there's timeline stuff of whatever. We have a website through the end of December as is. But in hearing on the feedback and communication and everything with working with Town Web, we have a busy site. As he's saying, there's a lot on everything. There's sometimes 2 redirects into one thing as they've been going at the framework. The mapping has been somewhat challenging. So they're working, and like I said, if we went bare bones, like we just want a page for, much like we already saw in the demo, we have the page for the meeting minutes video. You click on the camera, you have the video, you click on the minutes, you have that, the agenda, the packet, all that preloaded. Do that for each committee. You have a page for senior and community center, page for administration, all those. And then we start building out from there to kind of restructure it, so to speak. And sometimes less is more. I mean, the big thing with the new site is to get the email engagement out, because as you recall, everyone can sign up and they will get the notifications of meetings and notifications of the packets right in your inbox. So being able to start doing that community outreach would be huge.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, if I may briefly.
Yes.
There is a deadline statutorily for transition to .gov under Minnesota statutes 471.3422. That is June 1st of 2026. There is an exception to that in the parenthetical B of that statute that says if you've applied for the .gov but have not fully transitioned, that deadline does extend to June 1st, 2028. So I don't think you all will take that long, but it sounds like you've applied for it and received it, so you should be fine to transition at the rate that you want. But best practice would be to have it up and running by June 1st of 2026.
I think we're within a month or so, or less than that. Yes.
Correct. On the 2 phases, the email, the .gov, correct me if I'm wrong, is the whole gamut of our emails and everything have to be transitioned as well.
Yeah, this particular statute just uses the .gov domain is the language that it uses. Pardon me for not being a techie and knowing if domain extends to email. That's something if you have an inquiry about, I could see how statute, if they define that and what the rules are for emails. But this statute is in particular for my understanding websites for purposes of if you administer absentee voting, you have to have, and every single municipality does. So.
Yep, and I think the larger urgency with getting this up is we are on a shorter term contract with Civic Plus, so we don't want to drag her. We're looking fine for meeting it, but
Yeah.
sooner is better, especially because the new website I think is gonna be a lot easier to manage. It's gonna be a lot better for residents to get the information they're looking for. So that's kind of why I'm pushing to get this up with just the the essentials and add to it rather than longer process of.
And that's why we have it here is board consensus. If you supervisor expecting a 1-for-1, like we go live and wait, where's this page? Was that the intent?
To me, that doesn't bother me. I don't want to keep 2 websites up. That would be ridiculous, but I'm just, that you said that there's a demo site. It's a demo of what they've put together for Linwood.
Yeah, so that one is sent, so we'll share that through the clerk of kind of, it's what you've already seen in the survey. So those of you that partook in that, when she sent out those links, it's the framework of another town.
Mhm.
They've just done it and converted over ours. And like they said, it's a 1-for-1 and it's busy and it's got some broken stuff because we have stuff that's pointed in 2 places. So it's their base and they just, I mean, as it sits now, they can turn that on, but it's probably not what people would expect for what we were getting new, because it's just the same.
How quick do you think they would respond to things that may have been overlooked? So if we implement the new one, take down the other one, and we find that something's missing, how long do you feel that they will take to react to it to get that corrected? I mean, have they been pretty quick
They've been
or?
very responsive. I mean, that's part of the white glove service we have. So like we said, staff can just email them and within a couple hours, they'll do uploads. Obviously, the weekends is more actual page content build. We have that ability as well. So.
Additionally, I'm hoping to get an account myself to be able to make any sort of edits like that quickly. So it depends on what permissions they are able to give my account, but if I'm assuming I'd be able to create a page in like 30 minutes if there was something really missing. But anything that would be very bad if it was missing, I'm hoping to outline tonight so that is for sure there before it goes up. And then if the recycling Q&A is missing, we can get that up if we notice something like that.
Well, I agree with you, Supervisor Cole, is that I've done application development, and unless you spend an exorbitant amount of time doing, client testing to make sure everything functions, you'll get lost in that for months.
Yeah.
So as long as they're responsive and we have an opportunity to update where we see that there's a small typo or some misinformation, I think the quicker we implement it, the quicker that we can resolve the issues that come up and we can move forward with it. So are you looking for approval then for you? I'm just reading here. So to permit you and Supervisor Lutke to take actions necessary to deploy it, put it into place and take the old one out?
Correct. And if we don't want to get into the nitty gritty tonight, to make those determinations of when it is ready to avoid what you're describing of coming back to the board for multiple meetings and being like, yeah, after they had this one thing. So, the fastest way is to approve this. Me and Andy will make sure it looks good, get it up. If the board's feeling like maybe if there's something that you want to see before we make this approval, that's okay too. But my mindset right now is speed on this.
I agree. I mean, I have no problem with that myself.
Okay.
Supervisor Milburn, Supervisor Hennings,
So then
sounds like we're good here. So if you want to make a motion for
Yep.
that.
The final motion would be a motion to permit Andy and Sam to take actions necessary to deploy the new website to linwoodtownship.gov and to implement a redirect from linwoodtownship.org to linwoodtownship.gov.
Great. I'll second the motion. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none.
There's a question.
Yep, come on up, Brian.
This is a quick one. Will the new website have a township feedback, resident feedback? So if you all go in there and you think you've gotten everything, guarantee that if something's missing, somebody's gonna notice that it's missing. Is there a way, will there be feedback?
Yeah, like a contact form.
Yeah, so
I'll make
somebody
sure
can
that
put
it
the
is.
information on there.
I'll make sure it is.
Real good point. Thank you. All right. All right, so Sam made a motion, I seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, moving right on to 7-6, paid leave wage reduction determination. I think this is yours, Alicia.
So with the paid FMLA starting January 1st, 2026, we have a December 1st deadline of needing to notify all of our staff. So the employees are aware of how much will be being deducted from their checks. So it is recommended that the board approve a payroll deduction of 50%. Oak Grove, Now Then, and St. Francis are all doing the same, the 50-50 split with the staff and the city for that.
Great. Minimal financial impact. Is there any questions on this? Any action you'd like to take?
I will make a motion to approve a payroll deduction of 50% of each eligible employee's taxable wages for the employees to share of the Minnesota paid family and medical leave premium, effective with the first payroll period of January 2026.
All right, motion's made. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion?
If I may just chime in on the issue of paid family medical leave briefly, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
A couple of other things that I would recommend, and again, this is going to be something to where, this is a new working relationship the town has with APDO. So there will be some modifications to your personnel policy that will come. The vote that you all just had on that motion will be reflected in your policy. There are two other things that I would like to see reflected in your policy. One is that notice requirement that just informs them that you are notifying them of their right to take that leave. And the second would be the statute does create a carve out for paid family medical leave for the board to allow or to specify rather that your leave for paid family medical leave at the state level runs concurrent with instead of consecutive to state and other state and federal programs like there's another pregnancy leave in the state of Minnesota. There's also federally, you have the Federal Family Medical Leave Act. You can specify that any paid family medical leave taken will run concurrent with that, which would be my advice. You've already got whatever benefits you offer your employees in terms of time off, earned sick and safe time, and now paid family medical leave as well. I think that offers plenty of opportunities for an employee to take the time that they need away. And that if you allow it to run consecutive, it could put further strain on staffing issues for the township. So I would just have the board make a motion. I think you've already done this, so maybe we don't need, I don't know what has and has not happened. I haven't been here, but a motion to modify the handbook to include notice. One other thing about the notice that I'll say is, do you have a bulletin board anywhere in the town hall? Okay. Also posting the notice that's in this packet that comes from the state, making sure that that gets up. So I think the notice requirements, I don't know we need a formal motion on. Let's just make sure in working with ABDO, they get that updated to where we include the language in there. This serves as notice, and we'll have the acknowledgement form at the end. I've read the employee handbook, get it up on that poster. But the one thing I would like a motion on is a motion to allow for paid family medical leave or require that paid family medical leave at the state level runs concurrent with any other applicable state or federal leave programs.
So let's finish the motion that we got on the table. Okay, any other discussion on that? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so that first motion passes 5-0. And then anybody want to take a shot at restating exactly what Mark just said?
The best. I'll make a motion that the board adopts that paid leave run concurrent with other applicable leaves, federal, state.
That's great.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? I hope not. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. All right, we're done with 7-6. Move on to 7-7, Sage Intact. Alicia, I think this is yours too.
It is. So we, as a township, are currently using CTOS. That is a free, state-provided accounting software that we use, for all of our financial reporting and, everything like that. Unfortunately, we have outgrown CTOS, and we all sat through a presentation from Sage Intact, which is a cloud-based accounting platform. They have over 60 years of government experience supporting other municipalities. I do have a list of those available in here as well. But it would be recommended that the board approve the purchase and implementation of Sage Intact accounting software and services to replace CTOS.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions? Any board action?
If I may just amend the motion, or contextualize a motion that'll be made slightly, I would just have the motion be subject to attorney review of any contract. Anytime we're purchasing softwares or enlisting new services, we highly advise that you have attorney review of it. It's quick, doesn't take us all that long, but just to make sure that nothing is contained in the contract or purchase agreement that would not be advisable to the township. So you can still purchase it, but just do it contingent on attorney review. And the moment that the attorney green lights it, it's all go. You've already made the motion to approve it, but that would just be my advice. Take it or leave it.
Thank you.
So with that, I will make a motion to authorize the purchase and implementation of Sage Intact accounting software and services to replace the existing CTAS system upon attorney review.
All right, motion's been made, second.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion?
That's the 19,776.
19,776.
Does this not include Abdo's consulting?
That's correct.
Is that on tonight's agenda or is that, we're gonna do that another time?
That's separate.
So it came down from 24,000 something.
After removing the odds and ends?
Right,
Okay.
yeah. And got down to the 19,000 number. So yes, Bob, it is. All right. Motion made. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, moving on to 7-8. This is the 2026 recycling agreement. And Alicia, were you going to talk to that or?
Yes.
Okay.
So this one, Clerk Larson, this is just our annual agreement, and the clerk recommends that it is approved.
So this is just business as usual? Continuation of an existing agreement?
Yeah, this is about,
The annual one.
And we actually just had 11% added to it because they did a little study because we have so many other cities from
That's the
Anoka
next.
County. Okay.
So we're getting, wait, what's that?
That's the next one.
Oh.
This
okay.
one is just for the annual, so I'll make a motion that we approve the 2026 recycling agreement.
I'll second that.
all right, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, 7-9, 2026 non-resident recycling user subsidy. Alicia?
Yes, this one is the SCORE grant. So this is where Supervisor Henriksen was speaking to the 11% increase that we received. They did see just how much Linwood is doing with the recycling and the reuse program. So they are adding an addition to that SCORE grant. And it is recommended by Clerk Larson that the board accept the grant amount of, so the 11% in addition would come to $5,898.42 in addition to the $53,622.
Nice. Great.
I'll make a motion that we accept the 2026 agreement for residential recycling program for the non-residents use of the Linwood Recycling Facility.
All right.
I'll second it.
Motion been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, 7-10, recycling truck repairs. And person's name on this is not here to speak to it.
I can take
Supervisor
part of it just
Lidkey.
from discussion from my part. Recycling truck, as we noted, went out, got quotes. We got another set of quotes back for work. You know, and some of the discussion that we had at workshop and everything, you can see the amount is pretty much the base value of the 30-year-old vehicle. And, you know, some of the workshop discussion, I would like to not take action on this with the other budgetary stuff that we are working on. In terms of we have other options to make things work, and we come up with a more robust plan to try and share resources with the vehicles that we have and come up with a maintenance plan for our vehicles so they don't end up in such a state.
Yeah.
What happens, sorry,
Yep, go ahead.
what happens if this vehicle's not functional? Like, what are the consequences of not taking action on repairing this?
We have a vehicle
Okay.
so that we can utilize. We have multiple vehicles. We have another vehicle that's sitting back there not working either. So we should get to a point to where out of the budget discussions have a vehicle plan
Mhm.
and probably get ourselves something better, more reliable for all.
If I'm understanding correctly, this vehicle is not safe to drive right now? Or is it?
So I know some people up at A1, I talked to them, they said if it would not have been roadworthy, they would have never left it leave their lot.
Okay.
So-
It's okay. It's just,
So it's just, yeah, there's issues with it that should have some attention spent on them.
Okay.
It's like the brakes are apparently spongy, but they work.
Okay.
And it's not like a master cylinder is failing or anything like that. It's just that it needs new brakes and calipers in some areas. So the question is, you know, again, it's not that it's not roadworthy, but do you send somebody down in the cities with it? I'm not sure.
well,
And-
how
and
long
haul a
before?
trailer.
Right, and haul a trailer. The only good thing is the trailer has brakes, but to Supervisor Ledkey's point is this last week, recycling just scheduled time to use the 1-ton that sits in the public works garage. And so during that time, they use that to drive to the cities.
Okay.
So there's
No,
there's other alternatives.
sounds good.
But for right now, yeah, I don't know if it's worthy of spending this kind of money on it, I guess, until we go through the budget stuff and figure out what our overall plan is gonna be.
Okay.
I think waiting would be a good idea to.
Let's table this indefinitely.
I'll make a motion to table it to a future meeting.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. All right, this is tabled. All right. All right, we took 7-11 off, we put 7-12 in, so Abdo actions.
Abdo actions. So 2 decisions to be made. The first is they would like to do weekly 15-minute meetings with the township to, and I don't know if you have this in your notes, I'm blanking on what the purpose of those was. Was that just for onboarding?
That would be process status checks of much to what Attorney Allsites alluded to was Minnesota paid leave as we're ramping into this to-dos.
So it's more about getting them set up. It's not about updating somebody on what the issues are. It's more about getting Abdo what they need to be function. And so we have to decide who's gonna attend that. I could make it work if I must. I'd prefer staff handle it if that's a possibility, especially because they're gonna be better equipped to get Abdo what they need in terms of documents.
Couldn't that be a combination of staff and a supervisor, at least one supervisor in attendance?
Sure. Yeah, I could do my best to make those weekly meetings happen.
And I'd say if he can't, Supervisor Ledke's been involved. If he's tied up, then check with one of us to stand in.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So then, do we have to appoint somebody specifically, Mark? Or could we just say that's just how it is?
It depends. It's the very attorney answer. No, you don't need to be that rigid. Again, though, I would start encouraging putting in place practices to where the town board is giving direct delegation of authority and a chain of command. When we don't have chains of command, it can create ambiguity, uncertainty, and people may act in capacities that the board has not authorized them to. So I would recommend going through the steps of just making a motion to have staff plus 1 supervisor in the order of Supervisor Cole, Supervisor Ludke, and then any other available supervisor to attend the meetings, and just have that be the process that you all use.
Good.
Yep, so then the motion would be to delegate myself and then Supervisor Ludke, Supervisor Hendrickson, one of us 3 or more, to attend these weekly meetings, in addition to staff.
All right. Motion's made. I'll second the motion. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes.
Item number 2, process to engage Abdo for HR services. So we have 2 choices here. We can be the middlemen and women, middle people between the employees and Abdo, and we can introduce Abdo to them through us, but have them come to one of us with their issues, and we will direct them to Abdo if necessary, or Abdo will contact our employees directly, introduce themselves, and give them an email to reach out to with issues. Am I restating that right, Andy?
Yeah, that was for the introductory and then the process at which they communicate and engage with them.
So we already have an employee handbook in place that has a process. So if this doesn't match that,
Mm-hmm.
then would we have to update the employee manual if it's different?
Technically, yes, I would advise to not have inconsistencies in a motion that you pass in your handbook. You could acknowledge for purposes of the motion tonight that the motion will carry, and you have to notify employees, right, of your policy before you can enforce a policy. So you can either send a blast out to your employees notifying them of a modification to the handbook and the motion that's passed tonight, and that HR contacts are to run directly to Abdo, or you could simply wait until Abdo and I are done reviewing your personnel policy, and we could put that procedure directly into the personnel policy proper. We're going to do that either way. It's just a question of if you care to wait or if you want to send out the email blast earlier than then. But I would recommend, no matter what, if you act on this tonight, notifying your employees that the direct report, if you elect for it to go to Abdo, would be directly to Abdo.
So if we wait until the handbook is updated, anything that comes up between now and then would have to follow the existing process, which leaves Abdo HR out.
That's correct. You're paying Abdo. I would encourage you to use Abdo.
Correct.
Could our motion, and maybe this is what you said, but could our motion just address that? It is inconsistent with the handbook and just acknowledge that we're working on updating the handbook, but just to send that direction to the employees, whatever we decide.
Yeah, I would direct Ms. Larson or whomever you want to direct to send an email notification to your all employees, or written, however you want to go about it, but to notify all employees in writing of the new chain of command for reporting HR issues is to go to Abdo. I believe Abdo today in the meeting provided information on contact lines for what the email is, if employees do want to contact Abdo directly. So yeah, I think that you could definitely go that route.
Okay. Did Abdo have a recommendation? I mean, do they mind employees coming directly or do they prefer going through a supervisor? What was their take on it?
They do not have a preference or a recommendation. I think the way they presented it is two equally valid options.
Because my gut reaction is I kind of like the idea of an employee being able to go right to Abdo. Because it eliminates, the supervisor having any influence or being accused of having any influence over it. So
yeah,
I don't know what the other board members' pleasure is, but
100% agree. Yeah, I agree. The only concern I would have, and I don't know if this would happen, is if it became a problem of an employee or multiple employees like really driving up the expense of that with stuff that Abdo is saying, like, we don't really handle this. But that's a very hypothetical example, and that's something we could address if it ever became an issue. So yeah, I agree. I think we should go for now, employees contacting directly.
Mr. Chair, if I may briefly.
Please.
I'm not sure of how the cost structure works. I have not reviewed the Abdo contract, so, I don't know if there's a way to create a limit with them or an understanding. That's a conversation we could have at a later date, but I would highly encourage you all to go the route of doing the direct contacts to Abdo. Again, just to kind of go with the general theme that I'll encourage you all of, which is supervisors serving their role as elected officials and making policy and allowing Abdo to do their function as an external HR agency. With them serving as an external HR agency, it doesn't usurp power from you all as the town board. Decisions will still come back to you. We will have our disciplinary hearings pursuant to statute. We will hold performance evaluations pursuant to the statutory methods that we do it. But just know, in moving this off to an external HR, these are still documents. We had this conversation today that pursuant to Minnesota Statute 36711 are personnel documents that are town records that are to be stored in the clerk's office. And personnel files get stored different from the rest of your records. That's all statutory requirement. But I just want to make clear that the off-housing of records with HR and having direct contacts to an external HR doesn't mean that the board is not apprised of the information that they have. For purposes of conducting township business, the supervisors are allowed to view those documents individually to prepare. You're not allowed to talk about them outside of properly noticed meeting. That would be a violation of open meeting law, but you all are completely okay to review information that is contained in HR files for purposes of preparing yourself for a meeting.
Good. So is anybody comfortable making a motion on this to include all the details necessary, or is this something that should come back by resolution?
This was urgent, is my understanding, somewhat urgent. So my motion, and feel free to pitch in, is to direct Abdo to reach out to our staff directly and to update them and inform them about how they can go about getting in contact with Abdo for HR purposes. And also explain to the staff that updates for that process will be coming in the handbook, but that may take some time.
Okay. I would make a friendly suggestion that, because like Mark said, have the clerk send it out to
Okay.
employees. rather than Abdo directly.
Okay,
She can work with Abdo on the language and the contact information,
okay,
but that would be the only suggested change I would make.
okay, I will use that suggested change in my motion. Do I need to restate it?
Probably just for clarity, yeah.
So the motion is gonna be to direct the clerk to notify all staff that they are able to reach out to Abdo directly for HR concerns, and that the changes to that process in the employee handbook will be coming at some point in the future as we work on the handbook updates.
Nice, I like that. All right, I'll second the motion. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Aye. Opposed? That motion carries 5-0. All right, we're gonna go into 713. This is one of the resignations. I think this is Susan's, I think was up first. Yeah, zoning administrators was the first one. So you pulled it off of consent.
I pulled it. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't forgotten about. I may not be the best person to speak to it, but I'm happy to if
No, no.
nobody else would like to.
So we received a resignation letter. Oh, does anybody want to speak to it? Or do you want me to?
Speak.
We received a resignation letter from our zoning administrator. Received a 2-week notice. And I'll let everybody speak also. Susan came on board about 2 years ago, and she started out as a zoning coordinator. She did a fantastic job. She took on the role very quickly. So partway through, she was promoted into a zoning administrator position. And she served in a little bit more aggressive role in that, and took the lead on all of our planning and zoning projects and all the communications with the community. And she's done a fantastic job. I thank her for her dedication to the township, and she will greatly be missed. Anybody else want to add anything?
You did very well.
Thank you.
She's really brought planning and zoning meetings into some order. So greatly missed, so.
So if there's a motion to accept Susan's resignation,
I will make a motion to accept her resignation.
Second.
right, motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
has the township engaged in any conversations about interim fill-ins has this happened at a past meeting for in the absence of a zoning administrator contracting with anybody else? I know in the past, if a zoning administrator has been on leave, this office has contracted with Cindy Nash prior. Has that been anything that has been addressed by the town board to date? And does there need to be conversation at all of steps for how to move forward in the absence of having the zoning administrator on staff?
sure. Good question. You want to answer? You want me to?
What's that?
Do you want to answer or you want me to?
Oh, I can speak. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's been contacted because we have engaged with her prior. But yeah, in terms of formalizing, that hasn't come before the board with anything.
In the interim, my office is happy to help with anything that comes through the doors. So feel free to call our office. But we can address that at future meetings and continue conversations with Ms. Nash about her services.
Perfect. The only benefit of the timing of this is I think things are pretty slow right now. At least it wasn't in the spring. So. All right. So that passed. Now going on to the next one. Just don't have them right in front of me here. The next resignation is from our recycling coordinator. And this is Paul. He submitted a resignation, 2-week notice. And I think his last day is coming up maybe on Saturday. Paul started with the township in 2019. He actually held a couple of roles. I know he spent some time in public works out in the street. I think he actually worked with Tony, if I remember right. And So he was committed there, and then when the opportunity came to start working in recycling, I think he had worked with Ed Kramer and transitioned into that as a full-time position. Paul has created a really good working rapport with the volunteers, also with Anoka County MPCA. So he's taken a very active role in promoting the program and growing it. And Paul is another one that his absence will be noticed. And so I want to thank Paul for all his years and commitment to the township. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, he has been a great asset for the recycling area. Greatly missed.
So,
He's done a phenomenal job, and I think accepting his resignation would be a mistake by this group. I've talked to him. He said there are ways for him to tear that paper up. I think it's more important to keep qualified employees than just to say, okay, see you later, because it sure doesn't seem like we are even helping him out or even gonna work with him on this. It's an issue that we've gone through at least 3 times in the last 11 months. I think there's a way that we can save Paul because he wants to stay working here. He just would like direction from another person. And I think it'd be super easy to accommodate him. I was told by our attorney on the phone that if we do that, then we are accommodating for people. I think good employees are hard to find. Nobody here thought anybody could fill the Ed Kramer shoes that came out, that size 200 shoe, but Paul's done a phenomenal job. I just think Paul needs direction from different people and he would be more than happy to stay. I don't want to lose another employee. I gave up parks and school forest to protect our employees, and he's the only one I got left. I like Paul. Paul does a great job. If he doesn't get along with a certain person, I think maybe we accommodate Paul, get him on the right track in a different way, and Paul would stay and be happy.
This is the first time hearing that he's willing to stay on. Is that for sure?
I talked to our attorney. Our attorney said, I can talk to Paul about that. I can't talk to anybody else, but I can talk to Paul. And that is what I got straight out of Paul's mouth.
So he's just said that verbally. He didn't,
He
which
said
is
it-
fine.
He
like,
said it right
that's-
to me.
I was just curious. Okay.
So interesting position. So we're sitting here with a 2-week resignation signed by Paul. And so what do you do in this kind of a case, Mark?
If Paul has made the representation that there are ways to salvage the working relationship, the board need not accept it at this time. The board can accept the resignation, but need not. I do want to do a touch more research. What is the last date of employment for him that he said he would work in the resignation letter?
15th. I don't know if that's from the that's what I have in front
Of
of me.
November?
I believe Monday is the last day, but 15th is the last working day that he would be working.
The letter here is the 15th,
Okay.
this Saturday.
I'll go big picture of what I would propose in the situation. And then I will like to take just a couple of moments to do a bit of research to see what to do in the situation with the status of employment law in the state of Minnesota in terms of a municipality's ability to not accept a resignation. I would want to take a look at that before I advise you, but practically speaking, big picture, here's my thoughts. My thought is the pitch that I will have for the board and maybe a conversation that we can have in a workshop to set up. I want to place an emphasis on creating clear expectations of employees by retooling job descriptions, letting them know clearly what the work that they're expected to do is. I think sometimes our job descriptions are not reflective of that. What role supervisors, meaning the 5 of you sitting, on the seated council, what role you play? And is there any managerial role that you play with employment? And then pitching the idea of maybe having someone serve, and this would be an employee, serve as a coordinator. being an individual who deals with the day-to-day operations of the townships, dealing with if somebody is absent, having that person have the authority to tell somebody else, step up, go over there, fill that void. I think you all as supervisors have played that role individually over different areas, it sounds like. You all work, you have full-time jobs in addition to, the duty that you've taken to serve as elected officials. It's not always practical or easy for you all to serve in those functions. And so I think that maybe hitting a reset and taking that approach could be good, but that's a conversation that we'll have, somewhat at a later date. But what I would like is to just have the opportunity to step away for just a few moments and to research this issue. Maybe you could table this and I could come back with a more concrete answer.
Sure. And you want to do that right now?
That would be great. I don't think I'll take.
So let's table this and we'll come back to this at the end. That'll give Mark some time to look into it. So we'll pause on 7:14 and we will move on to 7:15, which is the sheriff's contract with Anoka County.
So 7:15, I pulled that one just for the formality of a review as well. The contract is the standard one that's come through, and obviously there was, it's based on the new board approval that went through last week, but the language was the same as prior, and obviously operations have changed. So just wanted that reviewed and perhaps let liaisons discuss that with the sheriff.
Yeah, I would agree. I've seen some things in there as well that don't align. All right, so we're gonna table that.
Anybody have a page for that contract? What page that is?
I only have it in my
Find it.
book.
You got in the book.
It's very early on.
Was it early?
Yeah. 'Cause
If
it's in
you
the
go back up to the
agenda.
consent agenda,
It's in the consent.
10.6.1. So if you scroll up to the top and click it again.
Page 21, page 21.
That's what it is. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, as Mark said, we should be having him look at all of these contracts that we're going through that are a little bit more complex.
What's the issue specifically with this contract? It's not what they presented us, or?
It appears, well, it's almost verbatim, the contract that we signed last year and the year before. So it doesn't take into consideration, any of the unique,
Sure.
some of the unique situations that we came up with them. So, I think if we can, retool this a little bit, be a little bit more accurate, be a little more comfortable for the township to sign.
We have time, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've already committed to doing the normal 8-hour shift. It's just a matter of making sure the terms that are written in the contract are accurate. So that'll give us 2 weeks between this meeting and the next meeting to have the attorney take a quick look at it and for us to get the specifics documented. Did we see where we're at? I'm gonna make a motion that we table this contract with Anoka County Sheriffs until the next meeting on the 25th to allow time to review the terminology and have the town attorney do a review of it.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded.
Wait, at the split. I gotta beat it.
All right, any discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Move on to 8.1. We are starting to get to the end.
Which is role definitions, correct?
This would be updated code of conduct, red line, updated code of conduct.
Which I wanted to strike out.
Okay, what was that on that page? Oh, yeah, sorry, I carried over from the other one. Thank you. All right,
Role definitions requires Mark.
Okay,
We basically, last time we discussed this, we decided to table it till Mark was here.
okay. All right, well, we'll give him a few more minutes here. We'll jump a little bit ahead to 9 and then we'll come back. Upcoming meetings, we've got Road and Bridge, November 18th at 7 o'clock. There's another meeting for P and Z the same night, that'll be in this room. So Road and Bridge will most likely meet in the conference room and the senior center. Parks meets on November 24th at 6 p.m. And the cemetery committee will be meeting November 19th at 10 a.m. in this room. Did I miss any?
We
Other
are meeting Thursday
meetings?
next week.
On the 20th?
Okay.
That's yeah, that was, she put out a
Yeah, I'm not getting her emails. She's
question.
working on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she just put out a questionnaire to see availability, but most likely that will end up being a meeting.
That's 5:30.
Yep. Yep, if it comes to be and posted, it'd be 5:30. Yep, and then next regular board meeting is Tuesday, November 25th, 2 weeks from tonight, with a workshop at 5:30 preceding this. All right, so let's back up. And we'll go back to the resignation discussion. Mark, would you find out?
Yep, so my advice would be as follows. To accept the resignation tonight, but make it contingent, have a contingency in there, essentially that unless the resignation is recanted or taken back by X date, it will be accepted. And so I know that last date is Friday. You could make it Friday. You could make it a date beyond Friday. But essentially that would give time for any further conversations with, I believe it's Paul, is that correct?
Correct.
Any further conversations with Paul. From a practical perspective of what you do in the interim, the board, you make policy. You may elect to appoint a different individual to supervise. But I think that, like I said, we should have a broader workshop to talk about supervisory duties, who oversees whom, creating clear organizational charts, who you respond to, etc. That should come at a workshop that we do at a later date. In the interim, if you elect to do something different, that's the discretion and the purview of the board.
Okay, thank you. It's the board's pleasure.
Seems like if we're gonna talk about this, we're gonna talk about this tonight. Unless Paul's willing to wait weeks for us to meet again. If I'm understanding the situation correctly, Paul's saying that he's willing to not quit if we change his supervisors, right?
That was my understanding when I talked. That was my understanding when I talked to Paul yesterday.
Right. And so if that's what's going on, unless he's willing to wait for multiple weeks for us to have this conversation in a workshop and then eventually vote in a different meeting, then we have to talk about it tonight. If I'm understanding the situation correctly, this is kind of a time sensitive thing.
I think to kind of, piggyback off from what you're saying. I think that if there's not a steps laid out in addressing this, it's not going to look any different in a week or 2 weeks or a month than it does right now. I think is kind of the message that I'm getting from you. So if a motion is made to accept his resignation, contingent on whether he withdraws it by a certain date, if we don't define what's going to happen between now and that certain date, we're going to be having, it's not going to change anything. So what's going to happen different than has happened so far? That would be my concern. I don't want to torture Paul and say, hey, we're going to give this a week and we're going to figure this out, and then nobody does anything to figure it out.
Right. That's why I'm saying, and I think this is what Bob's going for, is let's figure it out right now.
Tonight? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Mr. Chair, may I briefly?
Yes.
Like I said, and I've referenced a few times, it would be my position we hold a workshop and have a broader overarching talk about organizational structures. I don't think we're going to tackle that issue tonight. So any basis that I would say that there would be a change, if the board considers a change, you don't need to use the language that it would be on an interim basis, but my thought process would be making it clear that the board may come up with different policy, the board sets policy. So if you make a change in who supervises him tonight, that may change again, not saying it will go back to the individual who's supervising him, but just to say that we're talking about different organizational structures as a whole for how the township operates, you know, possibly a coordinator, possibly removing the duties that you all do on a day-to-day and moving those to a full-time employee type of position. That's all change that's coming down the pipeline. So just framing it from the mindset of this being somewhat interim in nature, because more change may come down the future.
Yes.
I've had conversations with Paul leading up to this resignation. He was aware before this resignation that these changes were coming down the pipe and that they would be significant, potentially like total changes to how supervisors manage. So I think that I think expressing that to him, in my opinion, wouldn't change anything because I thought that he had already known that. Just a thought there.
And to be clear, because there's conversations about changes, those changes have not happened. There is no consensus on those changes yet. They are not anything that has been set by policy by the board. These are simply things that we'll talk about moving forward, right? And they may come into effect at some point, but to be clear, those changes have not been made because we're speaking about them almost in a sense like they're guaranteed that they're not. Board all needs to vote on that. You all set the policy. But I did just want to kind of make that framing clear that, you know, the board has expressed interest to me about having some conversations about changes to the way that you operate. And that's great. That's fine. But just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
I did mention to him that he can rescind it, because you can rescind something once you have it in.
Of course, rescinding is an option.
What would you like to do?
I make a motion to remove the supervisor in charge of recycling on an interim basis. Is that right? It's really, well, both then.
Interim basis would need to be defined. Then I would just remove the interim basis. What I'm saying makes it almost interim in nature is if we do make changes long term, let's say tonight we appoint another supervisor to oversee it. We may move away from the idea that supervisors oversee anything, right, in the future. That's what would make it quote unquote interim. I would advise not using interim for now. We can change policy whenever we want it, right? No need to define a term for how long you're going to supervise them for. So I would just have a motion to appoint a different individual to be the supervisor. And I would omit the word interim.
Do I have to remove the existing one first?
I think replace, using the word replace would indicate there's one individual would no longer serve in that capacity and a new individual would. So a motion to replace Supervisor X and put in place Supervisor Y as overseeing Paul.
And you can talk. Man, can you talk? I make a motion to remove Supervisor Lutke from recycling and put Supervisor Milliburn into recycling.
All right, motion's been made. Is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
All right, motion's been made, seconded. Supervisor Cole.
What I'm about to say has nothing to do with Paul, or should not be taken as something against Paul. I don't know Paul personally. I've worked with him a tiny bit. He seems like a really good guy, hard worker. My concern is with the precedent this will set with employees, which is choosing your boss. I haven't heard of anything that seems like it would warrant this. I've heard that he is not happy with the supervisor that's in charge of him. But in terms of specifics, I have not been able to get any specifics on anything outrageous going on. And so my concern is, like I said, like sometimes you don't like your boss, but I am worried about what that message is going to be to employees that, you know, you have a problem with your supervisor. If you complain enough, if you threaten to quit, again, this is not a knock on Paul. I'm talking very generally, that the board will make that switch to somebody that you prefer. That makes me very worried.
And Mr. Chair, if I may briefly,
Yes, please.
I'm not saying any conversation that we have already had has crossed this line, but I do just want to set the line that the conversation we're having here is with respect to just the supervisory capacities. This in no way should be or will be a conversation or a performance review of Paul. So I would advise against any conversations about if Paul is or is not meeting job expectations, et cetera. There is a separate process and procedure for performance evaluations that would go before the board. This conversation should solely be restricted to a conversation of if we think it is a good idea to replace supervisors.
Thank you. All right. Motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion?
I was thinking some of the policies that we have started that it would change, that everything would be happy and we'd all be working together. I don't know what else to say.
So one quick question is, right now we've got it set to where you can have one or two supervisors that you report to. Is it unreasonable for a period of time to have the board oversee it? Oversee the program?
It depends on the nature of the operation. If there is something that needs to happen more than on a bi-weekly basis, because you all meet every 2 weeks, that's why in general, I like the idea of having a coordinator, an employee that is able to kind of call those shots and direct employees. The example I give is if there's a lock on the recycling center that it is broken, we're not going to wait 2 weeks to come back to a city council meeting. We're not going to leave thousands of dollars of equipment or whatever it may be in that building, or equipment where people could get injured in the building by leaving a door unlocked. We're going to have somebody like a coordinator call that shot would be what I recommend. So yes, the council could be the entity in the interim that does it. Just know that there may be situations that arise where there needs to be some type of direction given. So you could have the board do it. The question that I'm having too is even just in the language of the motion as raised, it was something to the effect of the supervisor to oversee this department. Overseeing is vague to me. I don't know if that means that you can hire somebody, fire somebody, delegate duties to them. What does overseeing mean? I think this is a problem that we've had historically, from the sounds of it, of not having clear definitions on what the roles of supervisors or liaisons, whatever word we use, are. And so I would just request greater specificity about the scope of what those duties are, and what the abilities are of the individual or entity. If it's the board, you choose the clerk. If you choose supervisor, Miller-Byrne, whomever it may be, just specifying with a little bit more detail of the powers that they have when they oversee a department.
Answered that question. Yes, Supervisor Cole.
So I think that part of the problem with your idea of the board overseeing and kind of what Mark's saying, and this gets into specifics, but there's day-to-day stuff that it's like who's making the call on how recycling's operating. We've had an event recently where somebody's going to make that call, can't have a meeting. What's frustrating to me about this is I feel like this is a conversation that requires us to get into specifics, like what's the problem? What is the problem that Paul has with Andy? Is it reasonable or not? And I'm gonna guess that we probably shouldn't be getting into the specifics. So how can we talk about this in a way that's not just totally abstract and meaningless without actually talking about what the problem is and if it's a real problem? Do you have any advice on that?
I think the issues can be talked about at a high level. If there are any issues that are expressed, if there are issues that are expressed that don't arise to, I guess, harassment or a hostile work environment, there's been no claim. Let's be clear. There's been no claim that has been, no lawsuit, no formal claim that has been submitted or anything against Supervisor Lutke. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, yes.
Right. And so I think in a situation, we can talk about the frustrations in the working relationship that have been expressed. I think that is all fine to talk about. That is not what we would call classified data or non-public data. That is information that is just It's public data. It's a conversation about a working relationship between a supervisor and an employee. So I think that is fair game to talk about.
We have a motion that's on the table. And before we take a left turn down a different path, we probably need to act on this motion, so.
Well, doesn't it relate to the discussion of whether we should approve the motion? Is what I'm getting at is like, if we're gonna remove a supervisor like this, I think that there should be a really good reason. And I'm down to talk about if there's a really good reason.
No, that's fine. If you want to, if it's regarding the removing of a person, yes. Then I think it's fair game to talk about. So, yeah. Oh, Supervisor Lucky.
Yeah, to me, it's the flaw in how the township is operated. And I've said this for years. This is not the role. We need to move forward on a plan to where the board is the operating entity. And we delay this and we kick this around, and then you do this kind of stuff where you're switching back and forth and all this. If you do nothing, you're chastised for that. If you just come and be an elected official, you're chastised. You're not doing enough. If we collaborate and communicate, of which Supervisor Hendrickson have been doing, frustrations are frustrations. Have the communication. And that's, to that point, jobs can be impacted with not having the information. So if we're liaisons for recycling and don't know what's going on with recycling, that's tough for us to come back to the board with something. So I don't know that just changing people changes things.
Correct, yeah. Other comments? Speak if you're going to. We're gonna move to a motion.
Bob, do you have any specifics? I have
You all
heard.
seen the resignation letter?
Mhm.
A lot of specifics in there, isn't there?
Sure.
My thought. That was my thought. And
What
you
were
know,
other specifics?
I'm gonna interrupt for 1 second, Sam.
No, go ahead.
And you know, when I was told that, well, if we're gonna do something for one person, we do it for all the people. But I know for a fact that the working hours of this building was changed for one person. We try to accommodate for the employees we have to keep the employees we have. We've lost some really good employees. To lose another one in the position he's in, maybe he needs work, maybe we need work, maybe we all need work. But I don't think losing that employee is a number one important. I really don't. Because if we all need to work on something, then we're all admitting, yep, we need to work on something. Maybe we need to help that person by giving them a different person to talk to. If that satisfies keeping a good employee, I think that's minor. I just think that's minor. And if people think, well, if we're just gonna crumble every time an employee cries and gets upset or does whatever, how do you keep good employees? That's my biggest concern, is keeping quality employees. All I gotta say.
In terms of specifics from what I recall something about the truck. Do we want to talk about that? Or am I mixing up? Sorry, I wish I had the letter right in front of me.
I don't either.
And in general, if I may, Mr. Chair, just quickly, I said fair game to talk about the working relationship, but I would again just advise the board that this is not a conversation or a place to have a conversation regarding performance of an employee. So just please be cognizant of that.
Perhaps maybe,
Yes, Lisa?
if we, next Thursday we're meeting, can we maybe see if Paul can come in and we can add that to the agenda on next Thursday?
Thoughts?
What's next Thursday?
20th is
Workshop.
Workshop to discuss what?
proposed workshop. 25 budget, finalizing the 25 budget.
It's a tough combination, but I think I am open to that. I'm open to a conversation here. All I'm saying is like, I think there needs to be a very specific reason for us to do a swap like this and not general. And if Paul wants to come in and talk about the specifics of what the issues are, that's fine with me. But as of right now, I'm not in favor of removing anybody.
Anything else to add? All right, we got a motion on the table. The motion is to remove Supervisor Lutke with Supervisor Millerburn. So all in favor signify by saying aye.
I, sorry,
Opposed? Nay.
Hey,
Nah.
So that motion fails 1-4. I would entertain any other motions at this time. Gonna move to
Do we want to do a motion to invite him in to talk about it?
postpone.
I'm, Jesus, I make a motion to not accept the resignation of Paul and recycling
Until a date.
until the 21st of November.
All right, motion's been made. Motion's been made and seconded. All right, any discussion on this?
because that's, I mean, with the language being what it is, that'll supersede what's written as the 15th. Or, yeah, we need action before the 15th to then schedule that.
If I'm understanding your question, yes, it would supersede. I would just add to the motion language that condition that if he does withdraw resignation prior to them, that the board, that he has the right to withdraw that resignation, and then he would remain an employee prior to November 21st.
Question, what's the significance of the 21st? Because board can't take any action.
On a
I
workshop?
guess- Yeah, I guess he could rescind, but the board is not in a position to take any action as far as changing supervisors or whatever you want, you
You
know.
want to change it to the 25th?
Is that 2 weeks from today?
Mhm.
Or 2 weeks
It's the
from
next board
yesterday?
meeting. It's the next board meeting.
I'll change it to the 25th.
So you're gonna amend your motion to not accept Paul Duth's resignation until November 25th.
Buddy, but how else can you say it?
There's the flip of it, which would be a motion to accept the resignation unless he withdraws that resignation by November 25th.
That one sounds better.
That way, I don't want to create a situation where an employee has submitted resignation and
You're right, and he wants to.
we've not created a path for him to receive that resignation.
You're rescinding your original motion?
Yes.
Do we want to make that the 26th, so it's after the meeting, so that he can choose to rescind it the next day if we choose to make some sort of action? Or the way it's worded right now, it seems like he would have to choose whether or not to rescind before we would have taken any sort of potential action. Does that make sense?
You can give him the day after so he can sleep on it. Right?
Yeah.
There's no problem with that.
So I think the motion that you're gonna look to make, if I understand you right, would be to accept Paul's resignation contingent upon Paul's withdrawal of it or rescinding it
I'll second.
until November 26th.
I'll second it.
Is that what you were trying to say?
Yep, but you said it so well.
So that's your motion?
Yep.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And who would like to take the responsibility of contacting Paul about
I
this?
will.
Okay, Bob will contact Paul. Okay. All right. Think we're done with this one, right? Okay. All right, that one's done. The last one is role definition, Supervisor Cole.
This is something we talked about at our last meeting. We decided to postpone until you hear, Mark. This is something you've been alluding to, but we have, you've already reviewed this, I believe, because you looked at the packet. The role definition draft, which is our very, very first attempt at defining what the supervisor's role is. Now, if I'm hearing correctly, we're gonna, your preference is for us to workshop this. I'm fine with that, although it does seem a little urgent to get something in place of what is a supervisor's role when they're managing employees and staff. So,
I agree. I would say though, I do think that this is probably, I would book an hour and a half. I think it will be a relatively substantial conversation because you're going to have a conversation about shaping the entirety of how your township operates, right? And there are conversations to be had about whether or not to completely change your form of government and go with what is a statutory town administrator approach, to where it's much like the cities that you see, you have somebody who runs the day-to-day, and the town administrator statute gives them 7 clear statutory authorities that they get to do without the town board's blessing at any point in time. It's part of what they get to do when you give them that authority. There's a hybrid version of that where you could have an individual who is a coordinator, which is a part of the roles definition you've seen in this packet. That individual would control the day-to-day operations and have specific powers delegated by the board. Again, maybe not necessarily those exact 7 that are in statute. If you undertake a full change in government and go towards a town administrator, it would be kind of a hybrid between the two. I do just think that trying to tackle this conversation tonight would be lofty. But I can say that I think my general vision for this is minimizing the amount of oversight that supervisors have, consolidating that into somebody who operates as a coordinator, and having the town board be taking back its power to make decisions, and utilizing its authority to make important decisions with everything from HR to changing job descriptions to changing the employee handbook, et cetera.
Supervisor Cole.
so I've talked a bit about this, John. If I remember correctly, you had a couple concerns here. So one was that it's not clear what the board has been delegating to supervisors to do on behalf of the board when managing employees. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2, as I understand it, is there certain responsibilities that the board doesn't have the option to delegate, whether they want to or not. Is that true?
I'll go to part 1 and then part 2. With respect to part 1, it is always important that if the board is going to delegate authority to any one individual, it could be a supervisor, it could be an employee, it could be me, it could be anybody. You're the board. You call those shots. You vote, you make policy. That policy can be person X gets to call the shot over this area. So if we don't have the origins of where that authority comes from, it begs the question of, was that authority ever delegated? And I think that part of the problem that townships and municipalities can run into is people operate based on assumption. They were told that they get to oversee this area, but overseeing was never defined. Now they're dealing with disciplining people on their own, or giving them reprimands, or telling them maybe job duties that are outside of their job description. All of those are things that we go back and we look back and we say, does the board have the authority? Has the board delegated the authority to that individual to do that? And so that's part of the workshop, is I want to go back and kind of trace down those lines. With respect to the second part of your question, is can the board do those delegations? There are very few things I can think of off the top of my head that the board must do. The board could delegate other individuals to, but it's customary practice for the board to do those things. So I'll give you one example. Is we've talked a lot about the possible discipline of employees. And again, speaking generally here, just the process of it, or even performance review of employees. There are statutory mechanisms that are set up for the town board to handle these in closed meetings. And so the board is the entity that should be overseeing this. You could delegate that authority to an HR department. Why? Right? you all are the elected officials. There are 5 of you for a reason and majority rules for a reason. And so I think that putting yourselves in a position to where you redefine those roles and make clear what the town board is going to do, creating limited exceptions and carve outs for individuals to take on additional roles, and then saying the day-to-day stuff, let's do this through a coordinator who gets to handle that. We really need to hammer out all of those possible exceptions, what the role of the coordinator is and how much power you want to give them. And then what, if any, will you all as elected officials have in managerial duties? I would advise to keep it slim, very slim. You have employees for that reason. And so then also coming up with the idea of, well, you don't have duties. Do we want to create, and this is one of your definitions here for roles, a liaison position? And if we create that, it's going to be my advice. You make crystal clear. The liaison is not the individual who calls shots. That's the board. The liaison's role is merely to be a conduit of information. Oh, this is the amount of recycling material that came in. This is the implication. This is how much less recycling material came in the winter time after leaves were done or whatever it is. And then coming to the board and saying, here's my thoughts. My thoughts are, let's change the hours of operation, closing it an extra hour because we don't need it open that much. People aren't coming from 4 to 5. Then the board votes, right? It's not one individual saying, I'm changing the hours of operation because I oversee this area. I think that will create more harmony amongst supervisors as well, because you're not going to have one individual calling the shots and then maybe reporting, maybe not reporting back to the board what they've changed. But instead, you all would be aware of everything that's going on because you would be setting those policies. So that's my vision for a liaison. But again, these are all things that are going to require some substantial conversation, but it's just kind of big picture thoughts.
No way it's only gonna take an hour and a half.
I'm being optimistic.
Supervisor Cole.
We could discuss this in depth another time, but I just want to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. So you're proposing essentially that we adopt some sort of coordinator role, which is a little confusing because we've got a recycling coordinator, we've got a senior center coordinator. But you're talking about a coordinator that's above them. That's essentially acting.
In lieu of them, possibly.
What does in lieu mean?
In place of.
Yeah, okay. I mean, like in this context, like.
Yeah, so not above, not, because that would be like employee above you all serving your roles as, overseeing each department. No, I'm saying scrap the day-to-day work that you all are doing and consolidate it with a coordinator who would be responsible to be kind of responsible for the day-to-day actions. And if you want to keep oversight, so you all can come to meetings, and it looks like you have this structured this way on your agendas. You all come and, you've got a recycling center report. You might have a report on something else. You can keep that structure, but making crystal clear that the purpose of those liaison positions is merely to be a conduit of information. It is not to have control over employees individually. It is not to set policy individually. It is merely to relay information and ideas back. So like the HR committee, for example, I don't think that the HR committee should call shots. I think that the HR committee's role should be to go out. We've got Abdo now, so this is different, but let's just use it still for the hypothetical. The HR committee should be responsible for going out and looking at different insurer options. Okay, which option is the most best coverage, best bang for your buck? Bring that back to the board, talk about it, board votes, right? Not having the HR committee go out and make that decision themselves. And so that's the type of vision that I have, and what our office sees as being the most effective approach when we see our townships that operate kind of the smoothest.
I think I understand where the confusion is. The coordinators are staff. So when you say that in lieu of them, it sounds like you were thinking in lieu of supervisors.
Mhm.
The coordinator would replace what we call our liaison role.
Yep.
To some extent. And these coordinators who run recycling and other staff report to this. One might call him an administrator, manager,
Administrator,
whatever.
coordinator, whatever you want to call them. But I mean, the other thing too is when you guys are operating as, I'm going to say manager instead of supervisor, just to make this distinction clear here. When you're operating as a manager, you all are working your full daytime jobs. You're not getting paid to go above and beyond and operate as that manager, right? And why are you processing somebody's paid time off request or vacation request? Or That's an employee's job, right? And so it's about creating those clear lines of communication, and your employees need to know who they're responding to, right? Simply put. And I think that, not saying that that's not clear now, but we can clear that up, I think, in whatever the new structure is, and create a clear chain of command.
So it almost sounds like you're describing what an administrator would do.
Possibly, and that's up for conversation, right? You could go with a town administrator approach. But like I said, it even if you want to go short of the full change of government, you can have an employee and write a job description that mirrors the portions of the town administrator statute that you like, and then tinker with it. Add things you like, take away things you don't. That's all up to the board. You set the policy.
Okay. So I've got down on here, because we need to work out a time to do a workshop with you. Like Bob said, it's probably gonna be more than an hour and a half, but I think we've got to get an agenda, because there's gonna be a lot of things that we're gonna have to cruise through. So I would say we get that on the schedule sooner than later. We need that pretty fast.
And then getting that, whatever the outcome of that is, when we go back to a meeting and you adopt any policy, just making sure we're keeping Abdo in the loop on whatever the policies are. I've informed Abdo, and we worked with Billy today to have Billy send Abdo current employee handbook, current lay of the land of who everybody responds to. But I did inform them that if there is change that's adopted by the board, we'll make sure to keep them aware of that. So that way they know, for purposes of, because the employees you've authorized them to talk directly to Abdo. Abdo's got to know what's going on the ground here. So just making sure that that's clear to them.
Perfect. All right, we'll get going on that workshop. All right, anything else? Was one heck of a meeting. I promise, Mark, they're normally a half hour long. I didn't lie. Welcome to our meetings. Thank you. I think the information that you provided tonight was absolutely valuable. So I really appreciate all your time. Look forward to you being a part of this on a regular basis.
Of course, happy to be here.
And all right, anything else to come before the board? Tony? Last comments?
Boy. Ready for bed. First of all, welcome. Your voice is loud and clear. I can hear what's going on. Perfect. Thank you. Second of all, I wish there would have been 4 of you on the board back when I made my rope's end and had to leave because I was told to bring my attorney to an employee review. So what you're doing here, especially with Paul, fantastic. I can't applaud more for what you're doing, but do it for everybody. Treat everybody the same.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tony. Is that it?
Yeah, I got lots more, but I'll save that for another time.
And for the record, this is Tony DeShane from
Typo Creek.
Typo Creek. Thank you. All right, with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Sam made a motion to adjourn. Bob Miller Burns seconded it. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. This meeting is adjourned at 8:42.